Welcome back to 10 Minutes With. Today I'm joined by Professor Lara Bloom. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
So let's start, if you don't mind, by introducing yourself because you're quite a multi-hyphenate, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, so it's probably easiest if you take it away.
Absolutely. So my name is Lara Bloom and I'm based in London but run the global organisation, the Ehlers-Danlos Society. I also have a Professor of Practice appointment at Penn State College of Medicine. I sit on the board for Genetic Alliance UK and IAPO and just wear quite a few hats.
Do you sleep?
I don't. No. Who needs sleep?
Totally overrated. And if you don't mind my asking, just to rewind slightly, so how did you get here? What's your both educational background but also your rare disease journey? How did you get involved in the community?
Sure. So I've been in this space now for 15 years, which feels crazy. And before that, I was a photographer, so completely unrelated. And all my education and training had been around media and photography. And then I was diagnosed in 2004 after a 12-year-long diagnostic odyssey, 13 years actually. And, you know, I kind of embraced that. And then it left and I just was like, okay, I've got my diagnosis and get on with things. And then around 2007, a couple of years later, I became much more symptomatic and really started looking for answers and wasn't really finding what I needed. And I had to, in the end, go to the US to find a conference for people living with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Then completely unrelated, sorry I'm waffling here, but completely unrelated to that, I went to a gallery event at Getty Images where I used to work, and a friend of a friend of a friend, we were chatting, and he said, oh, I hear you're leaving Getty Images to go and, you know, do other things. He said, why are you leaving? I said, well, I've got this health condition, you'd never have heard of it, it's long and boring, and you know, but I've had to have a change of careers. He said, no, tell me, I'm really interested. So I said, I've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and he kind of lost all the colour in his face, and he said, my daughter died of that when she was 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I was, not only is that, wow, it's the first time I'd met anyone in the UK that was connected in any way to this condition. So it felt like it was very serendipitous, and the universe brought us together in that moment, and we ended up speaking all night. And he said, I don't mean to brag, but I'm quite a wealthy man that wants to donate something significant to the organisation. I've been trying to reach out to them, you know, and I said, I've had the exact same experience. I'm not wealthy, but I'd like to donate some time to them. And he said, do me a favour, go away and think about everything that you would want from an organisation and write it on a piece of paper. At the end of it, this guy said, I know what I'd like to do with my money. I would like to donate for you to basically do everything you just said on that piece of paper.
What a vote of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I literally was like, what?
Are you sure?
The idea wasn't for me to do everything on this piece of paper, it was for other people to do that. And that was 15 years ago. And here we are, you know, it's been going from strength to strength. When I started and we launched this, there was me and him part-time. We're about to hire our 40th member of staff, and we raised $10 million last year for research. We've got a global registry and global biobank and things that I never would have dreamed about on that piece of paper all those years ago. So
it's an incredible story, an incredible journey. And so obviously you've had this amazing professional career, but if you don't mind me sort of pivoting slightly, you've recently had a huge change in your personal life as well. You've become a first-time mum. How has that been?
Exhausting, but one of the most incredible experiences of my life, without a doubt. Me and my wife have been together 11 years now, married 7 years.
Congratulations.
And we embarked on this journey to become parents about 3.5, 4 years ago now.
And have you managed to find spaces where, both queer spaces and also spaces within the rare disease community, where you can find fellow parents that are maybe going through the same thing? Yeah,
I mean, there's a great parenting community out there in the queer space, which is wonderful, and there's lots of groups that you can attend, and more people in the community actually that are visibly, you know, queer and parenting, which is something that wasn't there previously. And so when you worry about your kid being the only one with queer parents at nursery and school, that's less and less, you know, a thing. I'm very lucky that I have a group of, there's like 6 of us and 3 couples that we all grew up together, started straight, and now we're, you know, all gay, married, with kids, and they're all the same age, and it just happened completely coincidentally that it all came together. And that's wonderful, and I cherish that so much, that our kids will all know that, and it will be, you know,
and have each other as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
for these kind of, you know, big decisions that you're faced with as a parent. And frankly, you know, the community that is out there, the EDS and HSD community that I have the privilege to work with daily, have been a great source of information and comfort and support. Because one thing I completely underestimated was the physicality of being a parent. You know, so living with EDS, it's a challenge, lifting her up. You know, I've done something to my shoulder at the moment just from turning around and trying to get something from her car seat, you know, and that's left me with something like an injury. And, you know,
I mean, so many of those things are a challenge for, you know, completely able-bodied people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it must be, I imagine as well, that must be a mental challenge, being worried about either injuring her or even just worried about not being able to be there for her in the way that you want to be.
Yeah, and you know, I'm very lucky. I do live a good quality of life, and I'm very physically able, but then things like that happen that wouldn't affect someone that didn't have this condition in a way that it does you, and you're like, oh yeah. That sucks. So it's something that you have to be mindful of, and you know, it is what it is. But it's a joy, and you know, I as uncomfortable as it can be sometimes, you know, and the lack of sleep, which can feel torturous at times, it's still just amazing.
So how are you finding balancing being the multi-hat wearing, multi-hyphenate woman that you are, and also being a new parent? I mean, I think it's something everyone struggles with, but again, when you've got those kind of innate challenges due to your rare condition, that must add an extra level of complexity to an already difficult, you know, scenario.
I mean, I get asked hourly, it feels, how do you do it? Or like, I don't understand. And I don't understand either, honestly, because it's relentless, my schedule. At the moment, it's sustainable, but also because, you know, a 15-month-old is a bit like Dory, you know, they're like, oh yeah, you're back. Oh yeah, you know, and it's okay. But I think as she gets older, that will be much harder.
Yeah,
and
you'll feel that pull a bit more.
Exactly, and she will too, and that's what has to be my priority. So year by year, day by day, just keep sense checking it, and the joy of virtual, you know, something positive that the pandemic brought, that so many things are hybrid now, and you know, I don't think it replaces in person. I do think there's still such a strength in that, but family is the priority, so we'll just have to keep seeing how we go.
It's an interesting point that you make there, actually, about the pandemic, because it's a piece of not necessarily advice, but a reflection I'll say that we often receive from people in the Aurordis community, that the pandemic is proof that things can be done a different way. And actually it was perfectly successful, and in many ways more accessible for certain people living with a rare disease than the kind of more traditional methods that we often see as being desirable to return to post-pandemic. So are there any major lessons for you that came out of the pandemic that you think we should really hold on to?
Telehealth,
yes,
without a doubt, with these ridiculous rules on being able to practice out of state or out of country that suddenly went away for a couple of years and are now back for no good reason. That drives me mad, because that just helps to make a more equitable world in terms of access and care for people. So that's the big one for me. Like, get rid of the red tape, you know, let's have orderless healthcare, and it's possible.
So we always like to end these conversations with a piece of advice. So firstly, let's start with, what would be your piece of advice to policymakers, be that newly incoming European policymakers, or just in general about rare diseases that you think is either something that is a misconception or is underappreciated and you would like to be more strongly considered?
I think it's just time to get healthcare systems built around the chronic and not the acute. So everything, you know, pretty much all rare diseases are long-term. They're with you for life. When people get diagnosed, it's short-term. It's, you know, a 6-week physical therapy course. I mean, how is that helpful to someone that has to live with something for the rest of their life? And also the pathway that takes care of the physical, but also the psychological and the mental health aspect is essential. And having those sustainable, long-term, accessible all the time is what needs to be focused on.
To end, finally, what would be your piece of advice to people at home who are either looking, we've already said, looking into starting their own organisation, but maybe looking to become parents for the first time, or even just looking to make a big life change, be that a career shift, parenting, anything?
I think my advice is to always remember you can make new dreams. You can have new hopes, and I never ever would have imagined this would be my life, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's enabled me to do things I never would have dreamt. It's better than I ever could have imagined, and I was so devastated when I thought that I couldn't be a photographer and go in the direction I wanted to be an art director. I had it all played out. All my education had been leading up to that. And I think people are devastated that they think a diagnosis is going to change that and take that away. And I think pivoting and realising that you can have new hopes, new dreams, and have a new normal, and have a new goal and a new aspiration. See it as an opportunity where possible, even though it can be completely life impacting. Try and see that it's not the end. It just is a new beginning.
Well, on that incredible note, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a brilliant conversation.
Thank you.
And I look forward to speaking again soon.
Absolutely, thank you.
You've been watching 10 Minutes with me, your host, Rhiannon Walls. Make sure to tune in next time.